Hi everyone, I am Dipali Kulshrestha, working at Cloud Analogy as Senior Salesforce Consultant. I am very much active on various social media channels where you can follow me or can contact me directly. So here is my LinkedIn ID, my Gmail account, my Twitter phone number and my website. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone for attending today's webinar on automation testing in Salesforce using hybrid test framework. So right now I am having Rahul with me as the speaker of today. He is also a part of Cloud Analogy family. So if you like this webinar, then please subscribe and like our YouTube channel.
Thank you for introducing me. So let's just check the topics for our webinar today. We are going to have a quick overview on frameworks in Selenium, then understanding hybrid test framework in Selenium, creating a robust framework for functionality testing, creating classes and methods for several user actions, calling and using those methods in the automation script through OOPS concept, and then writing automation scripts inside the framework that we have made with the help of some use cases in Salesforce. So let's just get started with our first topic of today. So our first topic is, what are the frameworks used in Selenium? So Selenium framework is a code structure that helps make code maintenance easy. Without frameworks, we'll place the code as well as data in the same place that is neither reusable nor readable. So using frameworks, we can produce beneficial outcomes like increased code reusage, higher probability, reduced script maintenance cost, and higher code readability, etc. Talking about the frameworks in Selenium, we have majorly three types of frameworks that are created by Selenium WebDriver to automate manual test cases. They are data-driven test framework, keyword-driven test framework, and hybrid test framework, which is basically the merge of a data-driven and keyword-driven. So let's understand first data-driven test framework. So in data-driven test framework, let's talk about it a little bit so that you'll have a clear idea of what is data-driven testing framework. So while automating or testing any application, at times it may be required to test the same functionality multiple times with the different set of input data. Thus, in such cases, we can't let the test data embedded in the test script. Hence, it is advised to retain test data into some external database outside the test scripts. Data-driven testing framework helps the user segregate the test script logic and the test data from each other. It lets the user store the test data into an external database. The external database can be property file, XML file, Excel file, CSV, or etc. The data is conventionally stored in key value pairs, thus the key can be used to access and populate the data within the test scripts. Now let's talk about keyword-driven framework. The keyword-driven testing framework is an extension to data-driven testing framework in a sense that it not only segregates the test data from the scripts, it also keeps the certain set of code belonging to the test script into an external data file. These set of codes are known as keywords, and hence the frameworks is so named. Keywords are self-guiding as to what actions needed to be performed on the application. The keywords and the test data are stored in a tabular-like structure, and thus it is also popularly regarded as table-driven framework. In keyword-driven framework, the keyword-driven framework can be divided into following parts, which is test step, object, action, and test data. Let's talk about test step. It is a very small description of the action that is going to be performed on the test object. Object, it is the name of the web page, object or element like username, password, etc. So what is action? Action is the name of the action which is going to be performed on the particular object or element, the web element. The actions that can be performed are like clicking on a button or inputting a text on a text box. So next is test data. Data can be any value which is needed by the object to perform any action, like username value for username field. So this is pretty much about the keyword driven framework. I hope I'm clear about this. So moving forward, let's talk about some key points in keyword driven framework. So the idea behind the keyword driven approach in automation is to separate the coding from the test cases and the step. This helps a non-technical person to understand the automation very well. With this, a manual tester can write automation scripts. This does not mean that an automation tester is not needed, but in any keyword driven project, a hardcore technical coder is must needed for setting up the framework. So overall, I can just sum up this topic by saying that it increases the code reusability and readability for other coders or other developers to come and just continue writing the automation scripts without any hassle. So it is an approach of an hassle-free creation of automation scripts, and it is everlasting. Now that we know what is a data-driven and keyword-driven framework, let's understand what is hybrid test framework. So, as the name suggests, the hybrid testing framework is a combination of more than one or above mentioned frameworks. The best thing about such a setup is that it leverages the benefits of all kinds of associate frameworks. So basically a hybrid framework is a technique wherein we can make the best use of both data driven and keyword driven. We'll be going through some examples in our later section of the webinar, and we'll understand how can we build a hybrid framework by storing the methods to execute in an Excel file and passing these method names to the Java reflection class instead of creating the if-else loop in the driver script itself. So firstly, we'll move to our Eclipse ID. If you don't have an ID, you can simply download Eclipse. You can search it from Google and you can download it. It's very easy. So I've opened my Eclipse. I have a project. I've created a project named Webinar, and I have got a package named Hybrid Framework. So I have downloaded. I have created three class files inside this package, and I'll tell you what are these three files going to do. These three files mainly named common function, object repository, open and close browser. So why have we created these three classes? So first of all, we talk about open and close browser class. So inside this class, we are going to store all the processes that we are going to define for the browser, because while automating any script, we have to do some browser operations, right? Like we have to open the browser and we have to go to a URL and we have to close the browser, we have to maximize the browser, certain stuff. So for those kind of stuff, we will perform certain actions on the browser. So all those actions will be defined inside this class. Next is object repository. Inside object repository, we are going to store all the addresses of the web elements on which we need to perform any action, like clicking a button or simply inputting a text on a text box, or any drag and drop action or mouse hover action or whatever. So in this particular class file, we are going to store all our XPaths and CSS locators and IDs. Okay, so I hope I'm clear about this. In our final class, which I have named it as common function, inside this class, what are we going to do is that we are going to define all the methods that that means the functions that the operations that we are going to perform, like clicking on an element or inputting a text, on a text box. So all those will create the methods of those operations and we'll keep it here so that we can call it wherever and whenever we want it on our hard-coded test case. So let's talk about first open and close browser. So in this we are going to define, and let's see how are we going to do it. And one more thing before this, let me just show you. We'll also need a property file. I'll just show you what to do with that property file. Just right click on webinar and create a file, and we'll name it as config.properties. So in this property file, we are just going to initiate our browser with the value Chrome. I'll tell you why am I doing this. Okay, so inside this open and close browser class file, let me just create a method. So inside this method we are going to create an object for file input stream, and we are going to name it file. So here we are going to copy paste the address for this config.properties. It's simply going to copy this location and paste it here. So it's asking for adding an exception, so we have just done the needful. Moving forward, let me just create an object for properties. Since it's dealing with files, so it has so many exceptions to create, so I'll just generalize it. I'll just write exceptions. So if you do this, it will handle all the exceptions by default, any future exception that can be caused. So moving ahead, we are going to take a string variable where going to get property for browser and put an if condition where browser equals Chrome, then system dot set property, choose the second one, and inside this we are going to define something. Okay, let me just copy it from here. I have a used program. I just copy this. Paste it. I'll just tell you why we are doing all this. What is the significance of all this? I'll just explain you in a moment. So now we'll need an instance for driver. I must create a driver instance outside the method because it will be applicable throughout the class. So let me just create a driver instance here. This piece of code will maximize the browser. So here we have done the piece of code which is for the Chrome browser. We have written our code for this. So now let's just write the code for close browser as well. So before that, we must understand this, that since we will perform that operation through testng, like we will be means operating or executing the entire functionality from opening the browser to closing the browser. So there will be certain sets inside each piece of functionality. There will be certain set pieces. So to define those certain set pieces, and if we want them to run one after another, we'll be using some annotations which will tell the Eclipse that we want our codes to be run one after another. So for that we have certain annotations in testng. Those are before suit and after suit. So with that we can actually tell the code that I want this particular functionality to be executed first and then the another one. So here we'll put before suit, and here we are going to define another method for close browser. We'll simply write driver.quit. This will close our browser. So this is it, guys. We have created and we have defined all the steps for opening our browser. Now for today's webinar I am going to use just Chrome. So if you want to perform or you want to automate scripts for multiple browsers, make sure you need to define your operations for all the browser. Like the if condition would stretch and become an else if statement whenever you are mentioning a browser. For example, if br equals Firefox, then this particular functionality, and then after br equals Opera Mini or Safari or anything. So you will just extend it and define your actions for all the browsers. So moving ahead, in our common functions we are going to define means all the functionalities or all the operations that we are going to perform on each web element. So for that we have to define few methods inside this class. So some methods being public static void, navigate URL. Inside this we'll pass a parameter for you, a string type, then driver dot get URL. You can even add a sleep if you want. So we are taking it as a static method because we need not create an object for that. We can just simply use the class and call the methods whenever required. So I hope I'm clear about that. So as you can see, I'm using the driver instance and it's showing me error. So to solve this, we have to implement the function, that particular class. So for that we'll use extends test method setup. uh, Actually we are going to use the class name, which is, I guess, open and close browser. Sorry. So we are going to use open and close browser. So now we won't get that error. So after this we need one more method where we will be inputting our text. Enter input string expand string data. Driver dot find element by and simply we'll use send keys inside data. So so we have got our common function class ready. Now we'll take some use case in Salesforce and we'll see how we can use Selenium to automate those particular use cases in Salesforce. So let's just move to our org and see what is our first use case. So as you can see, we are here in our org. We'll click on opportunities and I've got some list of opportunities. I'll open one. So this particular opportunity named cloud opportunity. So what I'll do is I'll edit it and choose a date that is more than today's date. So if today's date is 26 October, so I'm going to choose 29th of October. Stage is prospecting, so we'll see. The name is cloud computing, cloud opportunity, and after we save the record, what we see is that the particular name has changed and CA suffix has been added to the opportunity name. So this is a kind of a trigger that allows this record to add the suffix CA into it whenever a close date is updated in the opportunity. the close date should be more than today's date. So we have to verify this particular functionality. So we'll move to our Eclipse and see how we can automate it. So here we are in our org. Let's just quickly create a class. We'll name it use use case. So we'll extend it with open and close browser. We'll add the test annotation into it. And then we are going to add the scenario. So now inside this particular method, what we are going to do is, first of all, we'll navigate till the Salesforce page, that is navigate URL or.salesforce page. We'll enter the input as username and text box, username and password. So next step is to enter the password. Then we'll click on submit button, and then we'll introduce some wait, let's say 2000 milliseconds. And now what we'll do is we'll navigate the URL till that opportunity record. So this is navigate URL method, and since I have the opportunity record XPath stored in our object repository, so we are just going to use it. So now as we navigate till the opportunity record, what we are going to do first of all is we'll get the opportunity name. So we'll store it in a string. So we'll take the string name as opportunity name before, and we'll go till the opportunity name before editing. And get text. Now we'll just simply have it printed, our opportunity string value. So we are getting this stored in a variable so that at the end we are able to compare it with the actual name when it's changed. So now what we'll do is we'll use the handling pop-up method because once we navigate to the record, the pop-up is going to come for sure. So now we are going to use the click method, and we are going to use the edit button, because next step would be to click on the edit button. So the next step would be to click on the close date opportunity. And the next step would be to click on future close date. And then we click on save button. Now what we are going to do here is we are going to take another string and name it as opportunity name after, and we are going to just store it inside the variable named as opportunity. So we're going to do the same XPath and get text to that. So once we do that, now the final step will be to have it printed. So we'll just use the opportunity after. So as you can see, we have completed the automation in our code. Let's just see, we'll run it and see what output we get. So now we have navigated till the cloud opportunity record. And as you can see, as we have changed the okay, so let's see the outputs. The first opportunity name was opportunity CA, and the next second opportunity name was cloud opportunity CA. The scenario use case is passed. So this is how we can verify and validate our functionalities or test cases with the help of Selenium inside a framework. So this was the use case, and it was pretty easy and easy to manage, and we can have lots of scenarios like this, and Selenium can easily handle Salesforce scenarios. So that was great easy. Yeah, let's just move on to our next section. So now let's move on to our next section, which is Q&A. So I'll be pretty pleased if you have any questions for me.
Hello, my question to you is that in Salesforce, how can we verify that any error message is displayed on the UI or not using Selenium?
So first of all, thank you so much for asking this question. And I would like to tell you it's a very valid question, that whenever we are opening a record in Salesforce, and if there is a validation rule that is working on for the update part, so there will be an error message, right? An error message will be triggered straight after any action is performed as per the validation rule. So how do we fetch the error message? There may be times when we will get some kind of scenario that we want to validate how the error message has been printed on the UI. So how do we validate that? So let's just move to our org and see how we have to go about automating this particular functionality. So as you can see in our org, there is a object called object1, and I've got a record name as cloud company. So when we open the record, so there are a couple of fields like name, sex, age, fees. So if we edit it and uh, so let's say we just remove the value from age in fees. Let's just give some values. Okay, so now when we are about to save it, so this error message should be printed. This says this is a required field. So whenever you are updating this particular object1 record and you are entering fees and not entering age, then it should show a validation error. So we need to fetch this error. So we'll see how in Selenium we can automate this particular message and fetch the error message. So we move into Eclipse and we'll just create a class. So So we have to start with navigating URL. Salesforce page. To enter input, we'll get here a username, and in this particular part we'll get our value, which is so after this we'll just introduce some wait. Let's say around 2000 milliseconds. And we'll go to that particular record for the object one. So you can, as you can see, we have stored in the object repository, and after that the next step would be to, because once we open the record we'll be able to see the pop-up, so we'll handle it since we have stored it, we have the function of it, so we'll call that particular function. And then next step would be to click on the edit button. So the next step would be to enter input in the piece text box field, which would be around, take it 23, and then we are going to click on the save button. We'll fetch the error message inside a string. We'll get the error message, and then we'll get its text, and we'll have that stored inside the string variable named error message. Now what we have to do, a small thing, we'll just take the error message and print it out. So now let's just run this piece of code and see if it works. As you can see, we have successfully logged into the Salesforce. Now it should navigate to that particular object on record. It handled the pop-up, and now for that main part, the code must have fetched the error message. You can see it in the console. Yeah, as you can see, the error message is, this is a required field, scenario passed. So we were able to successfully automate this particular functionality as our use case. So I hope you were clear about this, and thank you so much for asking this question, and thank you guys for joining the webinar. On this note, we end our webinar today. Thank you so much.